If you missed it last week, we had the big announcement of the 2025 Academy Award nominees list. We got all the nominees for Best Actress, the Best Actor, the Best Director, and of course, Best Picture. So I am here today to do a video ranking out all the Best Picture nominees, because believe it or not, I've seen just about all of them this year. And believe it or not, I, a YouTuber that talks about movies, have an opinion.
And I'm an NYU film school graduate.
And I figured, why not get on here and let you know my rankings. Now, of course, if you saw my end-of-year rankings video, which apparently not a lot of you did because those videos didn't do as well as some of my other videos for some reason, then you kind of already know my opinions on those films. But if you haven't seen those videos, now you get to hear them for the first time. Congratulations! I'm going to be ranking through all 10 of these movies, from the movies that I liked the least to the movies I liked the best. And there might be some very unconventional opinions on this list. This is not going to go the way that the Oscars and the other award shows have gone so far. I have very, I'd say, unique perspectives. I'm a unique guy. I'm not that unique, but I do have some hot takes in here and some strong opinions on some of these movies because some of these movies I really, really love, and others I detest and have no idea how they ever made it onto a Best Picture list. But that's just me. And I might not even be talking about the movie that you're currently thinking about, right? The movie, when I say detest, you're like, well, it's obviously that movie, right? Maybe not. So let's get into it. Let's start with number 10. To be fair, I'm Still Here as the only movie on this list I haven't seen. So ranking it last, kind of mean, right? I made you all think, this is the movie I detest, this is the movie I hate this movie. No, I haven't seen it. I've heard many good things about it, it just wasn't on my radar all year, and now it's not showing anywhere near me, so I haven't gotten the chance to go check it out, but it's got a Best Actress nomination. It's a movie that I hear is really dark and kind of dramatic, and it's like a historical drama, I think. So yeah, go check this one out. Let me know how it is if you've already seen it. Yes, Nickel Boys is number 9. I didn't like this movie at all. Nickel Boys is a movie about these two boys who end up meeting at this reform school called Nickel Academy, and they go through some shit. Now, that shit that they go through is interesting, and the story actually being told here is extremely engaging. My issue with this film is its style. Its approach to filmmaking is just not my cup of tea. If you didn't know, Nickel Boys is shot as a full first-person perspective movie. Every single scene, every moment of the film is shot from the perspective of one of these two characters that we're following. It does change itself up a little bit in like the latter act of the film, but it's still kind of that same, you know, let's shoot from this one perspective type of filmmaking, which in concept sounds cool, and it sounds like something that I would actually dig. I just didn't enjoy it in this style of film. This film that's supposed to be this really emotional, dramatic film. I feel like this style lends itself better to different genres, and here, although I can appreciate the artfulness of it, I can appreciate the performances and the beautiful story and the amazing score here, this is just one that I just could not connect to, and I found myself being extraordinarily bored throughout the entire runtime, which is why this ranks last, pretty much. I just did not love this movie. I did not enjoy watching it. I know that might be a hot take. Here comes another hot take at number 8. A hot take that I didn't think would be hot when I saw this movie, but apparently it is. Yes, The Substance. I didn't love this movie? I don't know. It's just, for all the reasons you would think people didn't love this movie, is why I didn't vibe with this one. I appreciate this movie more so than I appreciate Nickel Boys. I think there's a lot to really admire about it, and I did have a decent time watching it. This is not a movie that I hated watching. It's just a film that I would never watch again. Of course, The Substance, if you haven't heard of it somehow, it stars Demi Moore and, of course, Margaret Qualley, who plays this actress who wants to be young again, and she takes this substance that allows her to be young again. Let's just put it that way. And the film is part body horror, part commentary on womanhood and aging and all that stuff, and it's just a movie. It's a very unique film. It's one of the most unique things you'll ever watch in your life. There's very little dialogue in this film. It's a lot of visual sound design and just all this explosive filmmaking in your face with not a lot of yapping, which I also appreciate. The cinematography here is wonderful. The body horror is extremely well done. The third act lost me. Yeah, the third act is just absolutely nuts. Dennis Quaid is a lot of fun in this movie. Of course, Demi Moore gives an amazing performance. Should not win over Mikey Madsen at the Oscar. That would be ridiculous in my opinion. I understand why people love this thing. I understand why it's a lot of people's favorite thing of the year. It's just not my kind of movie. It's a movie that just does not vibe with me. It's not what I look for in film. It's a film that I laughed at, I had a fun time with, was a little bit bored at different parts because I think it's a little bit too long. But I just felt that I never had to revisit it. And my favorite types of films, and a lot of the films that rank ahead of this, are films that I would revisit, some of which I already have revisited a bunch of times. But yeah, Substance number 8 might be a hot take.
Nice to meet you. I'd like to know about sex change operation.
I see.
Amelia Perez is the movie everybody's talking about. They're saying it's the worst Oscar-nominated movie of all time. It's the worst Oscar contender. 13 nominations, ties for the second most ever. Ties Oppenheimer from last year. That's crazy. And although no, Amelia Perez should not be the second most nominated movie of all time, although no, it should not be a contender to win this award, it's also not nearly as bad as everybody's saying. I mean, come on, it's a fine movie. It's actually a pretty good movie. You know, it's a ballsy movie that has a very out there concept, an out there premise, and I think it works. It's definitely not the worst movie that's ever been nominated for Best Picture. I mean, go back. It's not hard to find some pretty stinky films that have squeezed into that category. If you didn't know what Amelia Perez is, it's essentially a crime drama and a musical mixed together. Also, with some commentary on, you know, gender issues, I guess. The whole concept of this story is that Zoe Saldana plays this lawyer who's recruited by this cartel boss who wants to have a sex change, and she goes and she helps her have a sex change, and a lot of other stuff happens, and they sing! And there's some family drama and some really unique and out there musical sequences. I know everybody's clowning on this thing from that one musical sequence. Sex change operations, I see. Like, yeah, it's goofy, but that's the point. It's supposed to be goofy. This is not supposed to be some serious musical that's going to be adapted to a stage play. Like, it's supposed to be a very goofy, out there film, and it's kind of why it works. I respect this movie, even if it's not my favorite thing in the world, because it takes a very large swing. I could say, out of all of these movies, this is the one where I've truly never seen anything like this before, and that's a really good thing. And yet again, I know it's getting clowned on, and I know it's the popular thing on the internet to clown on this movie. Obviously, I don't love it because it ranks number 7 here, but I also don't hate it because it doesn't rank number 10, and I think it's just another Oscar film people are going to forget about that maybe got a little bit too much love, probably for political reasons, because we know that's how the Oscar plays their game. If this thing wins Best Picture at the Oscars, you will hear me complaining about it. But I don't suspect that it will, so everybody relax. This might be another hot take. The Brutalist, which in my opinion is probably going to win the Oscar for Best Picture. I think this is the movie that's going to take it home. It's a movie that I really appreciated. I really enjoyed seeing it at the New York Film Festival, which was a big event. And the more I've thought about the film months later, the more I've come to like it more. But it's a film that I felt, after its first viewing, very disappointed by, because I thought I was going in to see something that would be a decade-defining film. That's how it was described to me. The early reviews of this film coming out of the earlier festivals were that this thing was literally, it was a movie made by Jesus Christ himself, is how the film was described to me. But in reality, what I found this movie to be was just an overly long study of a man's life, a man who had an interesting life, and a man who goes on this great journey. It's one of those films where you feel like you're watching an entire life kind of take place before your eyes, and it's this man played by Adrian Brody who's amazing in this movie, one of the greatest performances ever, just going through a bunch of different things, and seeing what he's going through is interesting. Interesting enough for 3.5 hours? Hell no. I know it's like not cool to be a film YouTuber and hate on long movies. I don't hate on long movies. I hate on long movies that didn't need to be long, and there is not a single person on this planet that can convince me that this movie, this story, needed to be 3.5 hours long. You could do this story in about 2 hours. You can cut an hour and a half off this thing and still make a brilliant movie. And that's pretty much my gripe with this movie. It's just that it's slower. It's a story that didn't need to be this slow, but it's because of its long runtime. I found myself kind of lost at different parts of it, but a lot of this film is amazing. Yet again, Adrian Brody, brilliant. Felicity Jones, brilliant. Guy Pearce is amazing. I don't love the twist that they do with his character in the third half of the movie. I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, it just didn't work. And because of that, the whole third act of the film just didn't really work for me. But altogether, this is a brilliant movie. It deserves to win Best Picture, I think, just because of the scope that Brady Corbett went with as a director, and what the film cinematically is achieving, I think is really, really impressive. But, yet again, not my favorite, not even my 5th favorite. Here's my 5th favorite. I really enjoy Conclave. This is just a really solid, really good movie. A movie that never really becomes anything spectacular, but it's a solid, safe film made by a director that I love in Edward Berger, who just makes really good movies. Conclave is a very simple movie. It's about the selection of a new pope, right? There's this guy played by Ralph Fiennes who is playing this head cardinal who has to run this whole system of picking a new pope. And there's a lot of politics at play, a lot of people that want the popeship the papacy, what the hell is it called? Whatever it's called. There's a lot of people that want it, and they're willing to get their hands dirty to get it. And there's a lot of other people that maybe don't want it, but would fit really well in that role. And it's Ray Fiennes' job to unravel all the politics and all these different characters and players, and it's just a really fun movie. It's essentially Game of Thrones in the Catholic Church. If you like Game of Thrones and you like that politicking type of writing and filmmaking, well, here it is. You get it for 2 hours here with a brilliant score and a twist that is going to piss a lot of people off, but I found to be so gutsy and so amazing, based on a brilliant book, so I'll give the writer of the book credit for that twist, but it's really, really smart. The filmmaking here is solid, the acting is all great, the pacing's fun. This is just an extremely solid movie that I can't rank ahead of the films that are right in front of it, because I just think these films are a little bit better, but Conclave is a special movie that I really enjoyed, and if Ray Fiennes somehow pulls off the Oscar win for this, I won't be mad. Wicked was the biggest surprise of the year for me, because it's a movie that was just not on my radar at all. If anything, it was on my radar as something that I thought was going to be one of my least favorite movies of the year. I'm just not a big musical guy, or at least stage-to-screen musical adaptation. I feel most of them end up being either just kind of overdone, just really safe when it comes to its filmmaking, or just kind of boring. Like, it's just not really my type of thing. They're very Oscar-baity. And I thought that's what Wicked was going to be. I had a great time with this movie, though. I had so much fun with Wicked. I really thought I was going to hate it, and I ended up absolutely loving it and being obsessed with the music that was stuck in my head for weeks and weeks after seeing it. The performances here are amazing. Ariana Grande giving an Oscar-worthy performance, which is easily the biggest shock of the year. You have Cynthia Erivo, who is also amazing. The cinematography here, I mean, the director really put it in. You could tell they cared about this movie. They cared about making a really good movie. This was not a shoehorned, BS movie that they knew would make money, so let's not put as much effort in it that we need to. No, everything felt real. The sets, the choreography, everything felt like it was made with just so much love, which you could feel as an audience. When a director and a cast and a whole crew made a film that they loved and they were passionate about, even if the film doesn't end up being good, you could still feel it through the screen. And this is one of those movies that did end up being good, and you could feel that love. The fact that it's a part one, I actually think was good for it, because I think where it ends, it's a really good spot to end a movie. Now, I don't know what part 2 is like. I haven't seen the play. I don't really care to see the play, so I don't know. Maybe part 2 will stink because they did most of the good shit in part 1. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but at the very least, I think this feels like a complete movie that has great sequences, great acting. It's not too long, and you know what? I'm excited for part 2. This was a really, really great musical, one of the better ones we've gotten in recent years.
If you're traveling in the North Country Fair.
This might be another hot take, because a lot of people looked at A Complete Unknown and just saw another sort of generic musical biopic, a movie that is really, really good, but doesn't do anything to set itself apart in that genre. It's just another musical biopic. And I agree. But I really like these movies. I really like a well-done musical biopic about a music star that I personally enjoy listening to. They're films that just connect with me. They're easy to watch. They're fun to watch. And they usually have great, amazing, engaging performances and music that I get to sing in the movie theater. It was amazing. Bob Dylan is a very interesting human being, and making a movie about him seems almost impossible, but Timothée Chalamet really brings his A-game here. I mean, this is easily the best performance of his entire career, and my God, he's spectacular in this role. He steals the screen from every second of this movie. He becomes Bob Dylan in a way that, this might legitimately be the best musical biopic performance ever, which is the one thing I will say sets it apart from the other films. This performance is the one that I think really sets itself apart as being the best out of all of them, between Freddie Mercury and Rami Malek, Joaquin Phoenix as Johnny Cash. This is the one that I will remember. James Mangold as a director, he's a really solid filmmaker outside of that crappy Indiana Jones movie. He doesn't make bad movies, so he's really, really good here. The direction is fine. This movie put me in a Bob Dylan craze. My entire personality for a month was listening to Bob Dylan, which when a movie can do that to you, that's a pretty good sign. It's paced well. You get to see all the different things that make Bob Dylan who Bob Dylan is, his evolution as a musician. Just a really solid movie. This is a movie I understand if some people think it's the worst of this bunch because it's just not their genre. But in the same way, The Substance is not my genre, which is why it ranks last. This is my genre. This is what I enjoy in films. It's one of my favorite subgenres of films, which is why it ranks so high on my list. See, we all have our likes, we all have our dislikes, which is why our opinions are different. Please, don't yell at me in the comments. Or you can. I don't know, it's engagement. It should be no surprise that Anora ranks this high. I mean, it's a movie that is just absolutely spectacular. It's an amazing, amazing film with an incredible performance from a director who has not really gotten the appreciation and respect that he deserves in Sean Baker. This is another film that I think could win Best Picture. I'm still betting on The Brutalist, but I think Anora, if I had to pick a second film, it would be this one, just because it's so amazing, and it won the Palme d'Or, obviously, and it's just such an incredible film. Now, Anora, if you didn't know, is about this prostitute who ends up with this Russian oligarch's son, who essentially kind of pays her to marry him, and the plot just goes into this chaotic spiral of chaos and nonsense, and it's very similar to a film like Uncut Gems, or any of the Safdie brothers films, if you've seen them. It feels very, very much like this, just this chaotic situation that all the characters are trying to keep together and keep organized, but every time they get a part of it organized, something else goes wrong, and it's just spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. Now, whereas those movies are very, I would say, tragic in a way, this film is much more comedic. It's a funny movie, and watching this character of Anora go through what she's going through is incredible, mainly because Mikey Madsen does so good. There's a lot of other great performances in this movie that have obviously been highlighted, but she is the standout, probably the best performance of the year from anybody. And I will say, although I said this movie's not tragic, the ending does feel a little bit tragic. Sean Baker does this incredible thing at the end of this movie where he almost changes the tone of the film in those last 5 minutes. Changes the entire, understanding of what this film is in those last 5 minutes and focuses in on this character in a deep and emotional way that catches you off guard and it rips your damn heart out. It's one of the smartest endings I think I've ever seen in a movie. It's one of the best endings, easily the best ending of any of these films outside of maybe number one. Anora is just brilliant. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I thought it was a masterpiece, and I still think it to this day. It's amazing, incredible, and easily the number 2 movie on this list, and I will not complain when it wins Best Picture. Hopefully it does. Because I know my number 1's not going to, even though it should. Of course it's Dune Part 2. Listen, you have to be a lunatic, in my mind. You have to be an absolute lunatic to see all of these movies, every single one of them, including Dune Part 2, and somehow think that Dune Part 2 is not the best film out of all of these. That might be a hot opinion. I might be yelling at you for not sharing in that opinion, but my God, this is the best movie. I mean, come on. I understand Hollywood won't see it. The Academy clearly hasn't seen it. They didn't even nominate Denis Villeneuve as Best Director, which is absolute insanity. This is what I used to go through with Christopher Nolan. I mean, Nolan, so many years, released all of these incredible films. The Prestige, Inception, Interstellar, The Dark Knight, Batman Begins. All of these just absolute bangers of films, and the Academy would never give him his praise, never give him his respect. He didn't even get nominated most years. Specifically for Interstellar, a movie that is way, way bigger and more well-known than any other film that came out that year. It's easily stood the test of time, which goes to show how amazing it is and how it should have been respected that year. But all these years, Christopher Nolan disrespected. Finally, they finally had to acknowledge him with Oppenheimer. Now, Denis is in a very similar position. Denis has done nothing in his career but make bangers and masterpieces of films that just have not been respected. Arrival, Blade Runner, Prisoners, and now, of course, the Dune films, which, yes, it is nominated, which is nice to see. But the fact that this didn't even get Best Director is crazy. The fact that it's not even referenced as a possible winner is insane. And it might be because the film came out in March, and yes, films that come out earlier in the year have a much harder time winning because of recency bias. It's just the way it is. It's why Sing Sing is not here. Sing Sing is better than 8 or 9 of these movies, but it's not here because nobody saw it and it came out all the way back in the early part of the year. Dune Part 2 is an absolute masterpiece. 20 years from now, when people talk about this year in film, they're going to talk about Dune Part 2. That's the movie that's going to be remembered. I love a lot of these movies. I really do. Wicked is another one that's probably going to be remembered, but I mean, it's Dune. It is Dune. This is the landmark film, and I just think it's the problem with the Academy that they almost just don't want to acknowledge their biggest freaking movies that make the genre what they are. This film, I don't really have to talk about it in detail because I've done it a bunch in this channel, but what is there not to love? It's the perfect adaptation of a perfect Frank Herbert book. Amazing performances top to bottom from Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Austin Butler, Zendaya, who kills it. Everybody in this movie at the top of their game. The cinematic, the effects, the sandworms, the battles, the music from Hans Zimmer, this journey that Paul Atreides goes on from being this reluctant hero to being the Lisan al-Jaib, right? It's just such an amazing film, an amazing story, and only Denis could have pulled it off the way that it is. Yet again, I don't get how this is not a favorite to win. I don't get how Denis is not nominated for Best Director, let alone winning Best Director. I just don't get it. I do not understand. And listen, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I know for a fact, and you can save this video and come back 20 years from now. 20 years from now, if we're all still here, if we haven't blown each other up by then, I promise you, the only film people will be talking about from 2024 is Dune Part 2. It's just how it's gonna go. And maybe Joker Filet a Doo-Doo, just because of how bad it was. Thank you guys for watching. What are your rankings of the Best Picture nominees? Let me know down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more notifications. I'll see you in the next one.